Ghislaine Howard, and as you can see from some of the works around me, I'm a figurative painter. My work's inspired by my own life, by the landscape, my family, friends, but also by the painters I love, Velázquez, Goya, Cézanne, Rembrandt, Van Gogh. Like them, I paint shared human experience, and I use paint and charcoal to capture something of the energy and vitality and physicality of being human. In fact, I think it was Van Gogh that started my desire to be an artist. When I was a very little girl, I suppose probably 4 or 5, my father was reading a book, and on the back of it was a drawing of an old man with his head in his hands. Simple black and white drawing. And it moved me to tears, and I asked my father about the drawing and what it was, and he said that it was by Van Gogh, and that Van Gogh was an artist who painted about feeling. And I remember there and then thinking, that's what I want to do. And when I was young, if I showed somebody a drawing, I wanted them to say, it's got feeling. And I think I still feel the same way today. Well, my paintings are very much about the dynamism and visceral quality of paint, the bringing together of colour, as you can see here, but also drawing into the paint as I work, redefining the figures, creating a sort of dramatic dialogue between the painted line and the drawn line, the better to give a sense of aliveness to the canvas and to the figures that I'm painting. Well, I studied fine art at Newcastle University, which is where I met my husband-to-be, Michael, and we lived in London for a couple of years after that, and then travelled widely in France. Michael had a scholarship, and we lived in Aix-en-Provence and Paris for a while, and it was tremendous to be immersed in the works of some of the artists that I really love, Matisse, Cézanne, Picasso, Van Gogh, and then Michael got offered a job at Manchester Metropolitan University, and we came back to my native northwest. So here I was back in Manchester, in the area that I'd grown up in, and the question really, I suppose, for any young artist is not can you paint, but what do you paint? And the question for me was answered really almost without me realising it by my making a drawing one day of myself pregnant in the studio mirror, and which led to a series of paintings. And I remember an older friend of my mother's coming in and saying, I know how that feels. And I realised that my subject matter would start with my own life, but then moving out into the wider world, the intimate, the domestic, out into the public space. And I've been really lucky because, like someone in the Renaissance, I've been given the opportunity to paint a 25-foot high altarpiece, to paint works for major cathedral spaces, as well as the small, intimate domestic works. I think where an artist lives is really important, and for me, living in Glossop, where we've been for the last 30 or so years, living in a converted tripe factory right in the centre of the town, is really crucial to much of the work I do. Walking out into the hills, feeling the energy of the wind and the elements and the ruggedness of the landscape, and making studies there absolutely feeds back into my painting and gives that sense, I think, of rawness and physicality to some of my work. Well, although at the heart of my work is my own experience, my family life, the intimate and the domestic, I'm very aware that I'm an artist living in the 21st century, and the outside world, of course, impinges on what I do. And part of the way that I deal with this is by a series called the 365 series, which started in 2006 after I was in London when the bombing happened, 2005 rather. And I started to make a series of small daily paintings, each one based on a news media image. People I'd never meet, but that came into my world via the news media. So out of this heady mix comes all the stuff that I do, and like so many artists, Rembrandt, Van Gogh, Monet, Picasso, I paint all sorts of things. I paint the landscape, I paint still life, our dog Pip, probably too many paintings of our dog Pip, but what always calls me back is the human figure.